Missed an episode of your favorite podcast? Choose from over a decade of content in our archives, not just the latest episode. All free at GCNlive.com.
This is your call to action. Get prepared, America. Economy, survival, energy, disasters. This is USAPrepares.com. Informative radio, educational radio. Interact now by emailing instructor@USAPrepares.com or text at 434-390-7953. Class, please take your seats. Now, your instructor, Vincent Finelli.
Everyone all set, cocked, locked, blissed? Here we go. Your dial's set correctly to USA Prepares. Thank you for being in class with us today. Jason's engineering the broadcast. Cathy in Ohio is with us, and she's got a lot to talk about. She's in the front of the classroom today. And if you'd like to call, if your topic is germane, if you have some tips and suggestions that are germane to the discussion, feel free to call. 866-582-9933. 866-582-9933. Welcome, Cathy.
Hi, Vince. How are you?
I'm well. I'm really well.
Well,
so what are we going to talk about? What are we going to talk about today?
Well, I have some recipes for things like hand sanitizer, bathroom cleaner, laundry soap, that type of thing.
Oh, great. Great. I've got one comment, and that is, we don't know how much toilet paper we use. People just buy it. They go, oh, we're running out. Let's get some more, that kind of thing. You can write on the inside of the roll. You can take a Sharpie or, a pencil, and you can write the date. And you can write that on the inside of the roll when you put it on. And then when that roll is finished, you can look at that and say, that's 6 days or 7 days or 12 days, whatever it is. Then you can determine your burn rate. Right, Cathy?
I was going to talk about that. I was going to mention things like coffee. Like, when you open a can of coffee, it's the same thing. Like, you just put the date on the bottom. And unless you have, like, a use that you're going really high on it or something, I'm going to start doing that so I know how many weeks or months it lasts me.
Right. And, that's the only way you're really going to know. And then if you have people come visit you, as times continue to get worse, and I believe they are and will, and you think, geez, there's two of them that are probably going to show up, the children, and let's see, so there's two of us and there's two of them. We're going to have to get twice as much. It's as simple as that, right? And that's what you should do, because otherwise you won't know. You really won't know. And I counted how many people might show up here, before the coronavirus hit. And I was thinking that it's probably going to be an electrical issue, a grid down situation. By the way, the grid went down in Puerto Rico yesterday. It was pretty serious. And so they weren't expecting that. And Mayor de Blasio in New York City said, we don't have enough electricity, so we're going to cut about 8% of the electricity going down the lines. We're going to reduce the voltage 8%. And it looks like a lot of people in Brooklyn are, we're probably going to have to shut you down. So I mentioned this for years, that this would happen. And here it is. It's happening, twice in 2 days. So it's a pretty serious thing. So the reason I'm mentioning this is, if the grid goes down and you have family members, and it looks like, it went down yesterday and it's still down today, and they say on the news that it can't be fixed actually they don't even know what the problem is. They're pointing fingers at each other. When do you think it's going to come back? We don't know. Well, then your relatives may say, we're coming to Cathy's or we're coming to Vinny's, right? That could happen. And it's not like it's a bad thing. It's just that are Cathy's family prepared for this? Is Vinny's family prepared? And I counted up how many there might be for, my in-laws and outlaws. Actually, just my outlaws. 40 of them. 40. Cathy, we don't have 40 pillows. We don't have enough soap for 40 people. We don't have enough clothesline room to, I mean, I guess we could make it. We could take some baling twine and string it between trees. But where would we dry the laundry? If we could wash the laundry. So, class, why don't you think about how many people might show up at your house? What do you think about that, Cathy? Is that possible?
I couldn't support that many. Maybe my kids and grandkids, but even then, I mean, you go through a lot of food and a lot of soap and shampoo and water. Yeah, that would be a lot.
Yeah, water. And here's the thing to think about for those of us who are farmers. Cathy, you're a farmer. A cow drinks about 30 gallons of water a day. So 10 cows, that's a real small herd. 10 cows, that's 300 gallons of water a day, just for the cows. Now, if you have a well and you have, a 100-gallon water trough, and you fill it up with, piping, a hose, however it's done, and the electricity goes down, how long do you think those cows will last without water? They'll be dead in 3 days. So what are you going to do? So there's a lot to think about, right, Cathy?
Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
Okay, so I'm all ears. I'm looking forward to hearing today's class.
Well, Vince, the first thing that I wanted to mention, and I know people probably have the recipe, but in case they don't, is the hand sanitizer. And I have done it a couple different ways, but the one that seems to work well is if you used about 2/3 cup of alcohol, like isopropyl alcohol, 1/3 cup of aloe vera gel, and then I add essential oils to it. Now, I like seeds, like it's spelled Thieves, like the thief. And I like that because it has a lot of antiviral properties and it smells really good. But you could add about 8-10 drops to that and then just put it in a little bottle. I save my bottles that have like the little lid that flips open, and I keep them one in my purse and one in the car and one by the sink. So that's a real easy one. I am starting to see aloe vera on the shelf a little bit. I thought, well, just one store that I went in, I did find a big bottle of it, but that was the only store that I found it. So that is one that I like. And the other thing, and I don't know how much people use essential oils, but I do use them in my cleaners, and I use them for personal use. And there's a few there's so many and they're all valuable. But I was thinking of like maybe my top 5 or 6 that I would get. And the first one would be the thieves oil. You can put it in a diffuser. It'll clean your air in your house. You can put it in a cleaner. You can put it in cleaners in the bathroom. You can put them on the bottom of your feet, a drop or two before you go to bed, especially when you get into a situation where there's a lot of colds and flus going around, and your feet have a lot of pores on the bottom, and it'll absorb that thieves oil into you. They also make for women, I don't know if they make anything for men, but it's like a necklace, and it's on a kind of a heavier chain, and it's got a little pendant on it where you can drop the thieves oil right in the pendant, or any kind of an oil, whether you wanted to use lavender or frankincense or tea tree oil. But I like to wear that, especially when I know there's a lot of colds and flus going around, and you can take your fingers and just kind of absorb, like you can put it on your hands too, but you can smell it. Like if you have a bad cold and you have eucalyptus oil, you can smell the eucalyptus oil, and it really does open up your sinuses. But the first one I like is seeds and tea tree oil. That's used for many different things. Antiviral, or you can use it for ticks. I mean, you have to dilute these. A lot of these you can't use right on your skin. So you can get online and use like a carrier oil, like almond oil or coconut oil or something like that, and dilute them. The third one is the eucalyptus oil. Clove oil is a nice one. That's used for repelling some insects. You can use it on, like if you have a toothache or sore gum, you can put it on a little piece of cotton and put that on there, and a lot of times that will help you heal it or until you can get to a dentist. And frankincense is another one that I really like. Frankincense is good for like cysts. Some of these oils you just have to read. Some you can use straight, some have to be diluted, so you just have to be smart about that. But frankincense is a great one for like cysts and little bumps, and it has many uses, but that's a really nice one. So those are just some that I think if you had those in your home, if we do get into a situation, at least you can use those as for a medicinal purpose. If nothing else, if you can't get to a doctor, you have those, I guess, tools in the toolbox for those.
Okay. So, Cathy, the CDC, and there's lots of controversy over the CDC right now. The CDC says that the final concentration of isopropyl alcohol should be 75%. So that would mean to get that concentration, you would need to have 3/4 of a cup of isopropyl alcohol is available in 91%. It's available in 70%. And I believe I've even seen it as low over the years at 50%. So, and it's at 99% too. So 99%, 91%, 70%, and I believe 50% concentration. So it would be diluted with, let's say, distilled water to bring the concentration down lower than 100%. So the idea is the CDC is saying 75% concentration of isopropyl alcohol. So when you make your hand sanitizer class, make sure that you look at the percentage of isopropyl alcohol in that bottle. How much of it is isopropyl alcohol and how much of it is something else like water. Okay, because it's diluted. I think the highest concentration that you can buy would be 99%. So it's still not pure isopropyl alcohol. So I just wanted to share that with the class. So the higher the concentration of the final product that you make, the more effective it will be as a disinfectant of bacteria and viruses and so forth. And as Cathy was alluding, she didn't quite say it this way, but it was used, if you got an injection, from the doctor years ago, they always wiped your arm with an alcohol soaked cotton ball. They always did that because it killed the bacteria on your skin, so that hypodermic needle wouldn't push the bacteria that's on your skin into your bloodstream. So I just wanted to share that about the concentration. All isopropyl alcohol is not of the same concentration. Any comments, Cathy?
Oh, I agree, Vince. Yep. You got to be smart about what percentage.
All right. So Cathy gave you the recipes, the formulation, and we'll be right back. Cathy in Ohio, USA Prepares Instructor. With us, and we're talking about hand sanitizer. So, class, the takeaway on that is that the alcohol is what does the job to disinfect, okay, to kill the bacteria and the virus. The aloe vera is the main ingredient in keeping your skin from drying out from the alcohol, because the greater the concentration of alcohol, the more it's going to dry out your skin. So to protect your skin from that, that's where the alcohol is mixed with the aloe vera gel. Just a quick statistic for those of you who are interested. Yesterday we reported that there was one death every minute. So that would be Wednesday's information. There's one death, COVID-related death, as reported by the government every minute in the United States. That was Wednesday. Thursday's number is one death every 56 seconds. So for those who think that it's getting better, it doesn't look like that. Now, of course, these numbers can be influenced by the number of tests that are issued. So maybe there's a ramping up of tests so that it's here, it's real, and our class is designed to help you with the information so you can protect your family. Cathy, back to you on your tips.
Vince, one cleaner that I've used in the bathroom, the shower, any place where you have like a really buildup of a kind of like that hard calcified or the scummy stuff that you get on the walls of your shower. And you can use it as another cleaner too. If you buy the Blue Dawn dish soap and I put it in a spray bottle. If you put half vinegar and half Dawn and you shake it up a little bit, and then if you take and you, like what I do is I wet my shower wall or counter or whatever is really greasy, and I spray it on there, and I'll take like a microfiber cloth or a sponge, and I kind of wipe it around so it gets everything, and then I spray it lightly again, and I wait about 5 or 10 minutes, and then I go back in, and I'll use like either a microfiber cloth or one of them real soft sponges that are okay for soft surfaces, and it breaks down that soap scum very well, and you don't end up scratching your surfaces. It works good on your sink that gets the buildup of the soap scum and all that. But it's just a handy cleaner, and I really don't buy any other cleaners for my bathroom walls. And you just have to rinse it off really well, and then a lot of times I'll dry it with a towel or something like that. But it's just easy. I buy a couple of those great big things of Dawn, and it lasts a long time. I keep one in the kitchen and one in each bathroom. And you could even use it like as a toilet bowl cleaner. If you get a lot of buildup on there, just spray it on there, rub it around, come back in 5 minutes, and it really does clean up well. So that is a tip that I learned from someone online, and it works well.
Cathy, it absolutely does work. One second. I just want to add an exclamation point to what you just said. We do exactly the same thing. We do it a little bit differently. I bought a 6-pack of spray bottles from Walmart, the kind you might mist your plants with, and I believe they're about a quart. And they were $5.99 for 6 of them. That was in the good old days. That was before 6 months ago. So that's at Sam's Club. Walmart sells them. Sam's seem to have a better quality, a better spraying mechanism. They last much, much longer. So they're about $1 a piece. You can get them at a dollar store. And we use a vinegar solution. We'll probably mix 50% white vinegar with water. And the bottle is written on with a Sharpie that says vinegar. And we spray the shower. And if mold just starts to show up, it kills it. And so we spray it on the shower to kill mold. And we also have another spray bottle in the shower area that is more dilute than that. I would probably say roughly 1/8 Dawn to 7/8 water, and we spray that on all kinds of things. So if we're looking for leaks in tires, we'll spray it on the surface where the wheel contacts the bead of the tire, and you can find leaks there. You can find leaks on the tread, the sidewall, the valve stem. We use it to wash down the shower. So yeah, we do very much the same thing that you do, Cathy. Well said. I appreciate that. But we don't mix it in the same bottle. Not that you can't. It's just that we didn't get that far advanced at our place. We'll be right back with Cathy. Cathy in Ohio is with us. Cathy, I just wanted to mention that over the years, I've noticed a phenomenon. Whenever there is a rocket launch, the space race, the weather would be wild, 2 to 3 days later. Yesterday, we had a rocket launch in Atlas V, a huge rocket, blasted off, sending a rover out to Mars with a payload of plutonium-238. And I've got some other comments about that later. But so let's see if what I've been saying is true. Okay, so 2-3 days later, after one of these big rocket launches, something weird happens. Like, for example, when I lived in Virginia, there'd be a rocket launch, and I'd talk to my neighbors, and I'd say, geez, You think the weather got nuts after that rocket launch? Oh, no. This is normal. There'd be 5 inches of rain reported on the Garden State Parkway in New Jersey. It'd be flooded, impassable, and that's normal. It's not normal. So let's see if it still holds true. Any comments about that, Cathy?
It seems like that has happened before. I recall that it does seem like when you send all this stuff into space, it does affect the weather. But yeah, I'd be curious to see too, Vince.
Yeah, so we'll find out. 2 or 3 days. Okay, back to you, Cathy.
The other thing I'd like to mention is I make a couple different kinds of laundry soap. One is a powdered, which is easier to make. So I can give you that recipe. It's fairly easy. It's one, I would use like a big bucket or a bowl or something, and you can, if you like it, you can multiply it many times over, so you don't have to make it as often. But one is 1 cup of borax, 1 cup of washing soda, 1 cup of baking soda, 1 cup of OxyClean, and 1 bar of any kind of bar soap. I like to use Castile soap a lot. You can use different flavor or scented. You can use lavender or lemon, but you can use any kind of soap. You can use ivory. You could use Spell's naphtha, whatever you want. You just grate it and you mix it all together, and you have to keep it in a really tightly sealed container. And depending on how dirty your load is, if it's not that dirty, you can just use like 2 tablespoons if it's just like towels or sheets. But if it's a little dirtier, I tend to go about 2.5 to 3 tablespoons. You can do that. The other one that I've used is, now this one's a liquid, and this one makes quite a bit. I believe it'll make, 4 to 5 gallons. And so I save my empty vinegar jugs or the heavy duty. I really don't like to use milk jugs because I've had them leak before. They're not, the plastic isn't that sturdy on them. But the other one that I make is 1 bar of Castile soap, and you shred it. I just use like a grater, like you would grate potatoes or carrots. It grates pretty easy. I just put it on like a plastic cookie sheet or a cutting board or something so that I can just put it right in my bucket or my pan. 1 cup of washing soda and 1 cup of borax. And what you can do is you put the shredded soap in a saucepan. I use like probably a 2 to 3 quart saucepan. Add some water about 1/2 to 3/4 of the way full, and you heat it up, and you just stir it with a whisk until the soap dissolves. And then once the soap is completely dissolved, then you can add the washing soda and borax, and just heat on like a medium-low heat. And just heat and stir it till everything is completely dissolved. It might take 5 or to 10 minutes. And then you just heat that, and then you have like a clean 5-gallon bucket with a secure snap lid on it. You fill that bucket up with hot water, up probably 3/4 of the way full, and then you pour that soap in, and you just stir it. Then you let it set overnight, and it'll get like congealed at the top. So sometimes you can use like a long spoon. I've already used, like, my husband's got a thing where you stir paint on a drill. I just do it in an area like in your garage or something because sometimes it'll splatter. And you just stir it. And once you get it stirred up, you're not going to get it all the way broken up, but once you get it stirred up enough, then you use a funnel and you pour it in your empty jugs of your vinegar jugs with the funnel. And you'll have to shake it because you'll get a little bit of pieces of soap. So you just shake it up a little bit every time you use it. And I only use, I probably only use like like maybe 1/4 to 1/3 of a cup. So it lasts a long time, and you can really make it for, if you get like Castile soap, you could probably make all this for $5 to $6. And if you use a different soap, you can even make it cheaper. Sometimes you can add, if you have dirtier clothes, you can add like some OxyClean to it. if you know, like I've really been in the yard or in the shop and they're greasier. It works fairly well. I wouldn't say it gets every stain out, but it works comparatively well to what I've bought at the grocery store. So what my thought was, if you bought quantities of borax, washing soda, baking soda, Castile soap, like your Zode or Fels Naphtha or Ivory soap, I mean, you could, if you wanted to be prepared, you could buy 5 to 10 of each of them, and you would have enough laundry soap to last you quite a while. So that's something I do. I make it, when I make it up, I give one to each of my sons, and they use it because they know how expensive laundry soap is.
So, Cathy, what does it actually cost, let's say, for whatever amount? When you add up all the ingredients, the borax, the washing soda, the baking soda, and the internet dropped out when you said the next ingredient, and then you added, for the first recipe, cup of borax, cup of washing soda, cup of baking soda, then some amount of something else, and then a bar of any kind of soap. What was that second to last ingredient? After the baking soda?
I might have said like baking soda, Castile soap, washing soda, and borax, and like your Fels Naphtha, Castile soap, whatever, Ivory. Those are the 5 ingredients. OxyClean. It's not a bad idea to have some OxyClean. Sometimes I'll add in my laundry soap. I'll add like a little bit of baking soda. I think the baking soda helps the fabric. I think it helps to whiten sometimes certain fabrics. I buy it in the great big. I think it's a 15-pound bag that I buy it in at, I think, Sam's or Costco or something. But if you had all those ingredients, now if you were like a borax and the washing soda, those each are probably around $4 to $5. They've gone up a little bit. Fels Naphtha is 99 cents. Castile soap's more expensive. It's probably $4 to $5. It just depends on what you like. Some people's skin is sensitive, so I would go with the Castile soap if that's the case. Baking soda, you can add that. Sometimes I'll add that to my mixture too, but those are the 3 expensive. So if you were to buy those 3 things, let's say you were to buy the borax, the washing soda, and soap, you're looking at anywhere from like $11 to $14. The only thing you would have to buy multiples of is your soap, because you use a bar of soap every time you make it.
Okay.
Did I explain?
I did a calculation on. Yes. Huh?
Okay.
And how long will it keep? How long will it keep?
Oh, it keeps forever. I keep it in milk crates in the basement. A lot of times I'll make 8 or 10 at a time. If I'm going to go through it, I just make it. It doesn't harden. You just shake it up. You'll hold your finger on the lid if you don't have a screw on one, and just shake it real good, and it lasts a long time.
Okay. Cathy, I noticed that you did not mention chlorine bleach. Do you use chlorine bleach in your clothes washing? We do not.
Once in a while. I do it when my whites get, like if I've got some whites that really got stained and they start to look dingy, I hang my whites out on my clothesline, and it really whitens them. I think if you use too much chlorine, I think it weakens the fiber. It's just my theory. When my kids were little, I used cloth diapers, and you know how those get stained. And I used bleach, and because of that, I think it broke down the fibers in my diapers. So I got smarter the next couple dozen that I bought, and I didn't use it as much.
Okay, I agree. I agree with that. I agree with hanging the laundry out on the line. And I agree with using chlorine bleach as little as possible for several reasons. One, some of it volatilizes in the air and can damage your body, especially your lungs. Another thing that it does is it kills the bacteria in the septic system. So those who are using these additives like the fabric softener and all that, that's hard on a septic system. But really hard is the chlorine bleach because it kills the bacteria. And a septic system works on bacterial bacteria's action to break down the solids. So you want bacteria. It's beneficial bacteria in your septic system. So lots of chlorine is a real bad thing. Now, sometimes we'll use chlorine. We'll put a small amount in the dishwasher. When I say a small amount, maybe like a teaspoon, and we will disinfect the dishwasher. Now, that goes down into the septic system, but it's 1 teaspoon. And we might do the same thing every few months in the washing machine to disinfect the washing machine. And we have an agitator type, and we leave the lid up when it's not being used. We leave the lid up so that it can dry out. But our washing machine is used a lot. So to disinfect the washing machine, teaspoon of chlorine bleach. So if you're doing whites, or if you have what we have, a fabric shower curtain, nylon, we have nylon and we have rayon. And we don't have the vinyl. And we just throw them right in the washing machine with maybe a towel on the gentle cycle. Maybe we might use a small amount of chlorine bleach, like a teaspoon, and we coincide that with disinfecting the washing machine. So we kill 2 birds with 1 stone. We literally disinfect the washing machine and wash the shower curtain with a white towel to, have it tumble a little bit better or get tossed around a little better in the agitator. Cathy, do you use a fabric shower curtain, or do you use something different?
Vince, we've got glass shower doors, so I don't have to deal with that.
Okay. So
but Vince, I wanted to mention too, while we're talking about borax and baking soda, you can make your own dishwashing detergent. It's just equal parts. Like you can use 1 cup of borax and 1 cup of baking soda and mix it up, and I just use like a heaping tablespoon, and it works pretty well. I went back a couple times and bought Cascade just to see if it worked any better, and mine worked just as well.
Okay, so it sounds like the 2 main ingredients, 3 main ingredients are for your 2 recipes would be borax, washing soda, and baking soda. And if you do those 3 ingredients, you've got your washing machine covered and your dishwasher covered. We'll be right back with Cathy.
Well, and a bar of soap. You got to have the bar of soap too.
Class, although we didn't say it, what you're hearing is, yes, you can. Yes, you can. So if you can't get detergent, if you can't get dishwashing detergent, there are other alternatives. And now you know 2 of them. Okay? Cathy, please continue.
Okay, Vince, there's a couple real quick things I'll mention about with clothing. They make a little sewing tool. It's called a knit fixer. It looks like a long pointed. It's got a little sharp point on the end, and it's long, like a real thin pencil, and it's metal. And at the top of it, it's got like an emery style kind of a feel to it. And if you got a snag in a sweater, a shirt, a pair of pants, a dress, you put that point right where the snag is, and you try to catch those threads, and you pull it through the other side, and then the little emery file catches it, and it pulls it through. And it doesn't harm your fabric. It doesn't pull and make a little line there where sometimes people try to fix it. It's a nice little tool. You can get them online, and you can get them at the fabric stores, but the name of it is called a knit fixer. So it'll really hide any little snags that you've got on your clothing. It's just something that will save you some money from having to go buy another outfit.
Cathy, we're going to be fixing our clothes more and more, class, so it's absolutely true. And this is what happened during the first Great Depression. People had holes in their socks, and they were darned. They would darn their socks. They'd stitch them back together. And that's what we're going to be doing. We're going to make everything last, because we're going to find out that what we used to be able to just buy, can't buy anymore. That's happening right now. Please continue.
Okay, there is another thing that you can buy. You could probably just use a real thin piece of fabric, but I like this. It's called a silicone-treated press cloth. And it's about 30 inches by 12 inches is the size, but it's almost sheer where you can see through it, and it's got finished edges. But if you have something that is really like a suit or something that might scorch easily, a delicate fabric, I would recommend putting that down first. You can still see your fabric, but then you won't scorch it and you won't like leave a mark on it. Some fabrics are just really funny with the iron, and you'll leave markings on them, especially if it's like a bridal type of thing or a formal event. If you've got something that you need to iron, it's a nice, handy little thing to do. You can also sprinkle it with a little water if you need extra pressing heat, because the water will kind of help get some of the wrinkles out if you have like cotton things that are just really difficult. But I made a mistake a couple days ago. Thank God I used this press cloth. I went to iron something, and I was ironing something red the time before, and I didn't realize it got on my iron. And it was a formal gown, and I had that down, and all of a sudden red came off on that cloth. I never would have gotten it out. So check the bottom of your iron and use the press cloth if you're working with something you don't want to have ruin or have scorched. So that was one thing. The other thing is if you are sewing elastic, most people may know this, but some people might not. Sometimes like the thread comes out of elastic on a waistband. If you're going to sew that, just stretch it a little bit as you sew, not stretch it to where you're like forcefully, but just gently. That way when you go to put it on your around your waist, you won't break all those threads. So it's just a little tip if you are repairing like a gym short waistband or something. Sometimes that stitching comes out, and you just need to sew right through it. Vince, the other quick thing I want to squeeze in before we have to go, and it's just talking about we still have time to plant mid-season crops. You could still get radishes and kale, spinach, lettuce, carrots, that type of thing in. Things that are peas that are going to like the cooler weather, because we're going to be done with the really, really hot, I would think, in the next few weeks. So by the time they germinate, they'll do well. So if you have a spot in your garden where you took out your lettuce or you took out some other produce and plants, maybe now is the time. And my brother, who's an avid gardener, what he does is he puts the seeds in, and then he wets it down, and he puts like thin boards or thin little planks down, and he leaves it on for about a week until he sees them germinate, and then he lifts it up and when he starts to see them germinate, and that way they don't get washed out, and it keeps the moisture in.
Well said. Well said. We're going to be planting carrots after the broadcast in a bucket. We're going to loosen up that soil and grow some carrots. I love it. Carrots are great for the eyes. We all know that. We were told that when we were children. Nothing has changed. It's still true. Cathy, thank you so much for sharing your wealth of information with us today. Boy, that hour went fast. So
it did.
Jeez. Yeah. I took notes, Cathy, and so if anyone calls, I can help them with your recipes and your mixtures. Thanks so much. We'll see you again.
You're welcome.
It's Cathy in Ohio. Everyone all set, cocked, locked. Hour number 2 of USA Prepares. Bert Bertonis is with us for this hour. Bert Bertonis is a senior USA Prepares instructor. He's a radio frequency engineer, an electronics designer, an expert witness. He's a patent holder. We're fortunate to have an instructor with his expertise as a senior USA Prepares faculty member. He doesn't just read and talk about it. He designs and builds it. I know for a fact that he has been designing and manufacturing microwave electronics for 40 years. I know this because I sat next to him on the bench in California. I'm not talking about the park bench. I'm talking about the design and technical bench. He is the one. He is the man who taught me how to repair satellite communications equipment. Welcome, Bert.
Hello, Vince. Morning.
You remember those days, Bert?
Yeah, long hours. Yep, absolutely.
Yeah, and you know, we would sit on the bench, sometimes just the two of us, and we'd be freezing cold because there'd be no heat in the building that we rented space in, and you know, we were just a bunch of young guys that didn't have any money, and we were building, and Bert is the guy that designed it. I don't want you to think that I'm the guy that designed any of this. I had input into, you know, the final product, some of the attributes, but I'm not the guy that designed it. Bert is the guy that designed it. And, you know, with his designs, our little 3-person company was in the lead of electronics design for the satellite communications industry. Those big 10 and 12-foot dish antennas with the satellite receiver. So what I'm telling you is Bert, for most, well, heck, in school at the university, I remember you were assigned a project to do a simple, I think it was build a simple amplifier. So instead, and we're talking mid-1970s, instead you decided to build a digital FM receiver, way more complicated, with SAW technology, SAW filters. And you weren't satisfied with just doing the simple, you know, amplifier. You had to go way above and beyond and put a little amplifier in the receiver. So that was really impressive, Bert. And I've been fortunate to spend a lot of time with you, and I've learned a lot from you. So I want to say thank you. And so, class, Bert, I know for a fact that Bert is the real deal because I've known him for 45 years.
Yeah, Vince, you know, that FM tuner I designed, it was a very opportune time because all these new ICs were coming out at the time. FM demodulator, subcarrier demodulator for the stereo signal, dual gate MOSFETs for the mixer, JFET for the RF amplifier. A lot of new things just seemed to hit then, and I was just intrigued and wanted to build the best FM tuner you could have. And, you know, again, had nothing to do. I did have that part-time job working for the speech communications lab, so that gave me access to a laboratory with all the assembly and test equipment. But, yeah, that was basically, so I guess I can say I was a fan of WNEW-FM in New York City, and I was thinking that if I could build the best FM tuner ever, we could pick up WNEW from over the mountains, which turned out to be geometry, just, you know, and propagation.
You're talking about picking it up from a couple hundred miles away, which was physically impossible, but that didn't stop you from trying. It didn't stop you from trying. And just one other backstory might put a smile on your face, class. So Bert built this, and correct me if I'm wrong, Bert, but you built this. There was no such thing as a digital LED display for the frequency on a tuner. You built that, okay, with a bar graph. So you turn the potentiometer for the station selection or the frequency, and it would light up across a bar graph to tell you what frequency you were on. There was no such thing as that before you built that. You built the first one. And then you got an interview with a company, I believe it was Blonder Tongue Laboratories, and they were kind of amused with, you know, this young guy understanding some technology. And I believe they asked you something about, maybe it was the SAW filter. You know, do you know anything about that? And you said, oh yeah, I built equipment using that. And they were just trying to figure this stuff out, and you had accomplished it. Is that true?
Yeah. So, you know, by, you know, looking for your first job after we graduated, I had gone to, you're correct, it was Blonder Tongue Laboratories in New Jersey. So, you know, it's funny, you go to university for 4 years, you study all these subjects, but I learned all this technology kind of on my own just for fun. And it turned out by just total, I mean, what are the odds of this happening? By total chance, they were developing a new over-the-air pay TV system that would broadcast scrambled television signals from the World Trade Center. God bless the old World Trade Center. And they had this home set-top box. And during the interview, everything seemed to go well, so they decided to unfurl the new top-secret schematic on the conference table just to see, would I recognize anything on it. And what are the odds of this? It used all the same chips and technology that I had put in the FM tuner, just, by total coincidence. So I started telling them how everything worked, and they go, wow, he can't be a spy from our competition. He's too young. How does he know all this stuff? Well, anyway, to make a long story short, I got the job and worked there for 2 years before I moved to California in Silicon Valley.
Yeah, so absolutely true. So, one of the common threads that goes through USA Preparers instructors is we're not satisfied. We are not satisfied with, well, it only leaks a little bit. We want it right. We want it excellent the first time if we can do that. And if we can't get it excellence the first time, we keep working on it until we do get excellence. So some people might say that we're dysfunctional or something like that. But that's not true. We just have a real high standard. And I've got it. And Bert, I would bet you that if you still have it and you haven't taken it apart, that receiver still works today. Is that right?
I haven't turned it on. One of the problems with electronics is you got to check your electrolytic capacitors, which leak. But I think one other part of that tuner that I think you didn't mention is we used it in our apartment at the university for the rest of the school year, and then I used it for my tuner at home for many years after that. I mean, it was, and yes, of course I still have it.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Okay, and so what I'm trying to tell you, class, is Bert is at the forefront of technology, especially microwave technology. And so Bert, 5G, 6G. Why don't we start with what's with all these Gs? Is it safe? And then let's talk about 6G. Now, I'm absolutely terrified of 6G because of what we discussed off the air, and I hope we have time to talk about 6G. So what's 5G and all the Gs?
Well, let's start with the Gs. So 1G, and of course we didn't call it 1G during 1G, but 1G is the first cellular system, and that came out, roughly speaking, in the 1980s. And you remember back then most cellular was just for your car, and they had these walkie-talkies, the size of a shoebox that you would carry around with you for portable, but it was mostly for cars. 1G used FM technology, very mature, basically the same narrowband FM that you'd use in a police two-way radio or a fire two-way radio. The innovation was really on the switching side, in order to connect a cellular network. The actual handset and base station technology, just narrowband FM. So very similar to the FM broadcasts that we still use today, frequency modulation, nothing real special, frequencies, around 900 megahertz, 800 megahertz. So that's, just below the micro, basically upper UHF range. And it was analog, analog modulation. And then 2G came along, let's say in the 1990s roughly, and what 2G did is digitize the signal. So up to that point, it was FM, you could pick it up on a scanner, you could intercept the signals very easy. When it got digitized, that was harder to do. The main thing for digital was it was able to compress the signal. Just making it digital doesn't necessarily do that much, but you could then compress the signal using advanced algorithms, and that allowed us to put more signals in the same bandwidth, basically, by going digital. And we used the same frequency bands, but we would multiplex multiple, in other words, put 3 or 6 or 8 channels where one channel resided before. We could do that. So that, increased the capacity. Everybody made more money. That was 2G. Any questions?
Well, I just have a comment, kind of a backstory. You remember Victor Pomper and H.H. Scott? And he said, he told the three of us, hey, guys, look, this was like 1980. It was 1980. Cellular telephone. That's the next big thing. So he was I think he was the vice president of H.H. Scott, the stereo receiver and electronics giant. I mean, top of the line. And he befriended us. And I'm not sure exactly why he liked us. We were just a bunch of young guys, and he was an older guy at the time. And he was telling us cellular phone, that's where it's at. And he was absolutely right. Absolutely right. So
okay.
That was 1980.
Well, so what 3G then did is, and it gets a little more complex and a little harder to conceptualize, but we went to something called spread spectrum in 3G. And so what you literally do is put one signal on top of another. And you're literally broadcasting in the same frequency band, everybody on top of each other, but your digital signal is coded such that you can pull that code out for the voice channel that you're using from everybody else. So it's a little bit harder to comprehend, but also it allows you to increase the capacity of the system, and it works very efficiently. And so 3G came along in the 2000s, roughly, and that basically added spread spectrum. In particular, it's called CDMA, code division multiple access, and your modulation would be, a digital modulation, but with the CDMA on top of it, and that allowed us again to increase capacity. And we also moved to some new frequency bands at that point. So that was 3G. Then 4G came along, let's say roughly in the 10s, 2010 to present. And what 4G did is use a completely different modulation called OFDM, orthogonal frequency division multiplex. And that really gets a little more complicated in that it breaks the signal up.
Hold that thought. We're going into our first break. We'll be right back. We're talking about the G's. Bert Bertonis is with us, Senior USA Prepares Instructor, a radio frequency engineer, and he just used a term that you probably haven't heard very often, if at all, orthogonal frequency division multiplexing. You might have heard of time division multiplexing, but orthogonal frequency division multiplexing, 4G, that's what we're talking about. Bert, please continue.
Yeah, so when we talked about the difference in the first few Gs, it was pretty simple, just, first G, just analog FM modulation. Second G, we went digital. 3G, we went to spread spectrum, or CDMA. So 4G, we go to OFDM, which basically divides your signal up into very tiny little bands and spreads each individual little bands of data all across the overall frequency band, and then reassembles it at the other end. So what does that do? It has some benefits in propagation. It allows you to handle signal fading and reflections and a lot of things to make it more robust. So that was basically 4G, which is pretty much what the networks are using now. But starting now in the 20s, we have 5G. And so 5G doesn't really change anything on the modulation. We're still going to use OFDM like we did in 4G. What 5G does is increase our capacity by going higher in frequency, going beyond microwave into what's called millimeter wave. Because basically, if you want to increase your data rate, you only have a couple of ways to do it. You can increase the frequency that you're operating on, because radio wave bandwidth are logarithmic. In other words, if you operate on a higher frequency, there's more actual megahertz in a little sliver of frequency, and more megahertz, more bandwidth means you can pack more data in it. The other thing you can do is make your cellular, your cell sites smaller, a more dense network with cellular towers instead of every mile, every 100 feet, let's say. And that will also increase your data rate by increasing the capacity and the distance that you communicate, very small cells. So 5G does that. 5G basically, it creates very small cells and also moves into much higher frequencies. Now, those frequencies can't really work that well to your cell phone. They don't go through walls. They don't propagate very well indoors. But we can use them for connecting the cell sites together. So we connect these little micro cells with either fiber optics, which works great if you have it, or millimeter wave signals. And that's where a lot of people are now looking at, are these millimeter waves safe for us? And there's been all kinds of safety studies. I know you've had people on the air, Vince, talking about health of 5G. So, I mean, my perspective, I'm obviously not a doctor, is from the engineering standpoint, is 5G safe compared to other Gs? And, that's the question a lot of people are asking. It's been in the news lately.
And, okay, so as we went from G, 1G, 2G, 3G, 4G, 5G, what about the power levels, the RF output levels, the transmitter power of these cell phones? Has that changed? Has it increased, decreased? How has that changed?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. Power level hasn't changed because it is regulated. So, let me cut to the chase. The question on safety, it really hasn't been answered because there's lots of studies, and exposure to any type of radiation is not good. And the more you get exposed to it, the worse it is. So the power levels haven't changed. You're regulated in what you can do in your iPhone that you hold up to your head. That's limited generally to a maximum of about 600 milliwatts. And they've made the antennas go on the back side of the phone, so when you hold it up to your head, it doesn't radiate into your brain. That's helpful. But I always tell people better to use Bluetooth because that's about 1 milliwatt and much safer. But the power levels haven't changed. So really what's changed, though, is the aggregate power. Because imagine if you have cell sites every couple of 100 feet instead of every mile, then there's going to be more total power in the air. And that's really the issue, is that we have more RF energy everywhere. Not that any one transmitter is any higher.
All right, hold that thought. Very valid point. Bert's with us. He'll be right back. Class senior instructor Bert Bertonis is with us. He's in California. And he mentioned aggregate RF power, radio frequency power. So my understanding is that's the sum of all the transmitted signals from all the cell phones combined with all the transmitted power of all the cell phone antennas, if we're talking about cellular RF. Is that correct, Bert?
Yeah.
It's the sum of it all.
Sure. No, that's correct. And so maybe we can back up a little and there's a lot of press. Does 5G cause coronavirus? You've probably seen it. I know you've talked about it with some of your medical experts. So obviously a radio signal cannot cause a virus. The virus is caught by droplets in the air. The virus came from China. You've probably heard the recent news of the brave doctor who defected to the United States and told the story of how it escaped from the lab in Wuhan. So the virus is horrible. It's caused by moisture droplets in the air, and obviously 5G cannot cause you to get the virus.
Okay. But what it can do, and there are medical doctors who have said this, including Dr. Shealy, Senior USA Preparedness Instructor, that it weakens the 5G and 4G and radio frequencies, weaken the immune system, which makes you more susceptible to succumbing to the virus rather than shaking off the virus.
There is some evidence that, sure. So there is evidence, and there are studies showing that continued exposure to radiation at any frequency is dangerous. The question is, what's unique in 5G? And what it is it's two things. It's going to these higher frequencies, and it's the intensity of the overall signal, because we're going to have transmitters everywhere, basically, with 5G. So let me tackle the first one. Is the frequency more dangerous? And actually, most studies show the most dangerous frequencies for the human body are really in the 100 megahertz range. That seems to be what your body responds to the most, not in the, say, 20 gigahertz range. I don't, we have a lot to learn, and there's more studies need to be done, obviously, but it doesn't seem to be that the frequency itself. I know there's studies showing, absorption into different types of human cells, but it has to get through your clothing and through your skin, and that's what a lot of those studies ignore. So myself, I don't believe the frequency itself is harmful. What I think can be potentially harmful is the intensity of the signal that everyone is going to be exposed to.
Kind of like if you walk in front of a garden hose, you probably won't be bothered by it. But if you walk in front of a fire hose, you might be bothered by it. So it's the intensity. It's sort of that, maybe most people won't be affected, but everybody's different. It's the same thing with X-rays. How many X-rays are safe? Well, we're not really sure. And most people can probably get as many as they want and may not affect their lifespan. But some people, just maybe there's other issues at play. So there's 2 or 3 things going on, and you get that exposure to radiation, and it triggers something in our body that creates cancer or other illnesses. So we have a lot to learn, but I don't think anyone's saying exposure to more electromagnetic field is good for you. Very good point. Very good point. Bert, I during the break, I looked up a location near you, in California, in Silicon Valley. You live in a small town, little hamlet. A lot of people, though. I used to live in the same town, and I picked a hotel there, and I just typed in the address of that hotel at antennasearch.com. And there are 90 antennas in a 2-mile radius of that hotel in your hometown in California. So that is increasing. And I believe what you've said is that there's going to be more, and they're going to be everywhere, and ultimately about 100 feet apart. Is that right? You're going to have it as you enter any office, any building. There's going to be cell towers, at the entrance to the building, and inside the facilities, you're going to have microcells. So that's the direction that the technology is taking us, and it's simply based on the physics of if you want higher bandwidth, higher data rates, then you have to do certain things. You move up in frequency and make the cells smaller. So again, you mentioned power. They're not necessarily operating at any higher power individually, but look at the fact that you're now closer to them and there's more of them. Mm-hmm. Are we ready to talk about 6G? That's terrifying to me.
Well, you know what? I think it's fascinating because so we talked about 6G. What 6G does is, again, to increase bandwidth, they're now looking, and of course we're just designing it, having conferences discussing it. We're looking at taking frequency bands even higher than millimeter wave into that region that literally is in between light and radio wave, where we haven't done a lot of work there because it's so difficult to build equipment and the technology. It's beyond semiconductors. It's an area that, frankly, human scientists and engineers haven't really done a lot of work on before. It's almost a mysterious area. We're talking around 1 terahertz. Frequencies that are longer than infrared light, but shorter than millimeter wave and microwave. But that's how we're going to get more bandwidth and more data, and potentially using those frequencies, again, not really to the phone that you're going to have in your pocket, but to connect these microcells together.
So
and then the question is, we don't know if it.
Okay, we've got, Bert, we have a delay here, so it's about at least a half a second plus probably another half a second, so we're about a 1 second delay. between you and me. My understanding, Bert, is that although we're talking about this, although we're investigating it, although it's fascinating, frankly, we do not have semiconductors that can switch fast enough to do this. Is that right?
Well, yeah. I mean, it won't be semiconductor. It'll be something, it'll be something we're going to be yet to invent. It's probably going to share more commonality with light technology than it will to integrated circuit technology. But it's fascinating, and it's sort of like, the final frontier in terms of electronics and photonics.
Although you're talking about this, do you have any concerns about if this were deployed and we're talking about light combined with radio frequency or in between those two spectrums, that if those transmitters / receivers and communications devices like handheld cell phones, we'd be walking into a stream of something that is absolutely unknown? Is that a concern?
Well, maybe, but, on the other hand, we've grown up over thousands and tens of thousands and hundreds of thousands of years under a massive emitter of infrared radiation and radio wave and millimeter wave. You know what that is, right?
Yeah, vitamin D. The sun.
The sun. And in fact, in small doses, I know I enjoy walking on the beach and getting my dose of suntan. I honestly think it's good for you in small doses, and it's been proven at vitamin D. Well,
yeah, I know you're such a fan of it that in our conference room back in 1980, you brought in these new fluorescent tubes, and you said, we're going to put these in the conference room because we're all going to feel better, and our customers are going to feel better. We're going to use full spectrum lighting. So you were an early adopter of the power, the positive power, the benefits of full spectrum lighting, the kind of lighting that the sun provides.
Yeah, that's more than the benefit of it. It's really getting rid of what is really very bad, because normal light bulbs put out a very orange spectrum. Both your traditional tungsten bulb and also the cheaper, older fluorescent bulbs. They're not full spectrum. So it wasn't so much the benefit of full spectrum, it was getting rid of something that actually was proven to be dangerous, which is the, let's call it non-full spectrum bulb. But yeah, basically every office I've worked in since then, I've made sure we had full spectrum lighting in the building.
Just as an aside, have you found that when you made sure that your work location had full spectrum lighting, did you find that other people didn't know about it until you brought that up?
Pretty much, yeah. Although I think as people are more aware now, and I can usually tell when I go in a building if it's full spectrum or not, but people are way more aware. I mean, you go into Home Depot now, and, they'll have two fluorescent bulbs on the shelf, a non-full spectrum for $1 and a full spectrum, let's say 5 or 6,000 degree bulb for maybe $2, which is well worth it to spend the extra $1 for that bulb.
So when we had our company in California class 40 years ago, we were aware of this particular lighting technology. And I'm not saying that I'm the guy that figured this out. Bert's the guy that figured this out. So, but we adopted it and we've been using it in our personal lives for 40 years. Bert, the thing is, 5G is going to be deployed whether we like it or not. Is that right?
Well, it's already being deployed,
but I mean, in greater numbers.
Yeah, I think that train's left the station.
Okay.
There's not much that you or I can do about it except make people more aware. And I think what really needs to be done is more health studies, more hospitals and researchers doing testing to find out more about what is the safe level of radiation, and that we
All right. Do you have time to, okay, so 6G is not here yet, and it's going to be a while before. Do you have an idea of the initial installation of 6G? Do you know when that might be? Are we 5 years away?
You know, it
10?
seems to be these 10-year segments. So if that holds, let's say 2030.
Okay. When we come back, Bert, can you share with us something that is frightening to me, absolutely for sure, I believe, and you can tell me if I'm wrong, but I believe it's frightening to you too, and that's wireless charging. That means charging your cell phones without a power cord, wirelessly. Is that something we can talk about?
Sure.
Okay. Hang on to your hats, class. This will probably scare you. Class, we've been talking with Senior USA Prepares Instructor Bert Bertonis, and he is my teacher. And he's been my teacher for 45 years. I kid you not. He teaches me things every time we talk on the phone. We're going to be talking about wireless charging. I am terrified of it. And here's a way of thinking of this. We've talked about aggregate power. More devices, all transmitting, means more power in the air, more radiated power in the air. Now, we'll talk about adding to that wireless charging. Bert, please share with us. What is it?
Well, first of all, let's hope that this doesn't go anywhere, because it should be terrifying and it is dangerous. So there's actually companies that, a few of them even public, that are saying, oh, you can charge your cell phone without ever plugging it in. We'll just have a radio frequency signal permeating the room that will be received by your phone and charge the battery. So the reason it just doesn't make sense is that you have to understand how radio waves propagate. And once they leave a transmitter, they fall in energy extremely fast. Let me give you an example. If I'm working on the bench and I have a transmitter at one end of the bench and a receiver at the other, and I'm, measuring signals, measuring antenna propagation, let's say I start with 1 watt at one end of the bench. At the other end of the bench where, I'm only going a few feet, that signal, you know how low that signal falls in strength by? Take a guess then.
Oh, I'd say maybe 1,000th. Maybe 1,000th at the other end.
Exactly. In other words, people think, oh, it falls by half or even a tenth. No, it falls by, approximately 1/10,000th, just a few feet away. So think about it then. If you want to try and charge a cell phone battery with watt hours of power, what you would have to transmit to fill that room up with energy, it would literally have to be gigawatts to make it effective. And nobody's going to allow that, thank God. But there's companies that have been saying, oh, let's get exemptions in the radio frequency regulations. Let's set aside certain frequencies. Let's make exceptions. Let's try and detect if anyone's moving in the room, and we'll only do it when no one's around. Well, none of that really works. And it's a silly idea, but it sounds so good to someone that doesn't understand how radio waves propagate that, these companies are still really trying to change the rules and regulations to allow such a thing to happen. And that truly would be dangerous, because it would literally, and I'm not just saying this for sensationalism, it would be like, living and working inside a microwave oven while it was on. That's the level of intensity that you would need to overcome the losses of a radio wave in order to pick up enough energy to charge a battery. So
let's just have a simple example. Let's say, Bert, you have an electric car, okay, and you want to charge your electric car wirelessly. So you have the antenna in front of the house, then you have your house, and then you have the electric car behind your house. All close in proximity. I believe what we're saying is, if you tried to pull something like that off, charge your electric car wirelessly, you'd set the house on fire.
Oh, absolutely. Now, let me say, we're talking about far field. There is something called near field, and that's totally safe, very efficient. So when you go into Starbucks and you put your phone on the mat, that's near field coupling. It's very efficient, let's say at least 50% efficient, and totally safe, because that energy is really confined to literally just, within, a millimeter of where that charging pad is. So no, completely different technology than permeating a room with the radio wave.
Isn't that what the electric toothbrushes use, like the Philips electric toothbrushes? You put them in the stand. There's no actual contact between the toothbrush and no metallic contact or like a wire or a connector. It's charged wirelessly. Is that what you're talking about? The near? Yes.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
And that's totally safe. And by the way, your analogy of the electric car, they are working on pads that you'll be able to drive into your garage, and there'll be a pad on the floor of the garage that'll couple to your car. And again, that would be near field coupling, efficient, safe. I mean, I wouldn't suggest getting down there while the car is being charged, but because the level of magnitude of charging a car is going to be so high compared to your toothbrush example, Vince. But again, different technology, totally safe. Don't confuse that with RF charging, which would not be safe in any way.
One quick comment. Bert, I remember reading an article in a national publication that Disney had decided to pursue and then decided not to pursue wireless charging. Is that true? Yeah, they had a different technology where they were going to have it permeating the room and it would charge devices. And I think anything like that permeates the room is probably a bad idea at this point to use in any way. Your example of working inside a microwave oven, that's a great example. Bert Bertones, thanks so much for being with us. And if you can, clear some time on your calendar and we'll have to do this again and again. Bert Bertones, thank you so much.
Thanks, Ben.